In this lesson, we'll start building some unit tests for the iMusic codebase. Before we begin, let's actually delete this one called iMusic tests. This is just a sample, so we don't need it. So I'll highlight it and hit the delete key and select Move to Trash. I'll highlight the iMusic tests group, and I'll begin by creating a new Objective-C test case class. I'll call this Artist Tests. Click Next. And for this one, I want to make sure that only the iMusic test target is selected. Say Create. Often when writing unit tests, it's convenient to have both your class under test as well as your test case open. And you can do that easily by opening up a new tab. If you type Command T, that will create a new tab. In the main tab, I will open up Artist. And then I'll have my Artist Test open in this other tab. So it makes it easy for me to toggle back and forth. So looking at the Artist class, we can see a number of things we should probably write unit tests for. I'll begin by creating a unit test for our designated initializer, specifically this init method called initWithID name. We want to make sure when this gets called, we're appropriately assigning our values passed in to the appropriate fields. So I'll switch to the Artist Test class. I'll create a new test method called testInitWithID name. I'll create an NSU integer for our artist ID, create a string for our artist name. I'll then create an instance of artist, and this is going to invoke the actual method under test. Now I need to actually import the artist class. So I've called the method under test, and I want to write a few assertions to validate its state. So I'll use stassert equals, and I'll say after calling this, the artist ID should be equal to my artist ID up here, specifically the value 100. This last argument in this assertion is just a custom message I can provide to provide some additional detail about why a test may have failed. More often than not, I typically just set this to nil, as the default language generated by the assertion is sufficient for me to figure that out. Then I'll also write an assertion testing the artist name. Now, stassert equals is for testing primitive types. If you're comparing object types, then you'll use stassert equal objects. So I'll say if the artist name is equal to the artist name I passed in there. Now I can go up to the product menu and select test, or more conveniently, I'll just type Command U. So this will build the app and then run the tests. And I can see my test succeeded. Now, if I change this to a different value and did that again, I should see it failing. Let me do a clean build of that one more time and run that again. So there we go. We can see that our test failed, and specifically it's telling me that Metallica should be equal to foo. So I'll change that back to the artist name, and our test succeeded. All right, if I'm testing the designated initializer, I should probably also test the convenience initializer that we have here as well. So let me do that as well. I'll create a new test method called testArtistConvenienceInitializer. Now I'm probably going to have the same setup in this test, so instead of repeating that over and over again, I might want to define what's called a test fixture, and I can do that inside of the setup method. I'll first define some instance variables to hold the test fixture values, and then I'll override the setup method and initialize those to the values that I want them to be in my tests. So with that done, I can delete these two lines. And down in my test convenience initializer method, I'll simply call that method under test, passing in my artist ID and artist name. And just as I did above, I can write some assertions to verify the state. So I'll test the artist ID and test the artist name, hit Command U, and that looks good. An important aspect of the artist class is that it adopts this NS coding protocol. So it implements the initWithCoder and encodeWithCoder methods. And as those are really essential to its ability to be persisted, we probably want to write a test to verify that that condition is always true, specifically that it always adopts this NS coding protocol. So I could easily write a test for that. So I'll write a test called testAdoptsNSCoding. So I'll create an artist instance, and then write an assertion that that artist conforms to the protocol NS coding. If this test fails, then it'll just spit out a message saying artist does not adopt NS coding. I'll run that just to verify that that's successful. So if at some point in time you're doing some refactoring and you come along and you decide, hey, there's no good reason for this thing to be adopting this NS coding protocol, the next time you run your unit tests, well, you'll see this fails. So I'll see the failing message and it says artist conforms to protocol should be true, artist does not adopt NS coding. You'll often find that having a full suite of unit tests provides a nice regression test bed, so that as you're making changes to your code and you accidentally introduce a breaking change, your unit test can point that out to you right away, which is much better than finding that bug after you've already deployed to the App Store. So let me just change this back to what it was. Put that back in place. Run my tests again. And I can see my test succeeded. Okay, so you should now have a general understanding of how to write unit tests using Xcode and OC Unit.